Thanks. Well, welcome everyone to today's recording of WEF series of business roundtables. I'm Walt Marlowe. I'm the Executive Director of the Water Environment Federation, and we've been fortunate during the coronavirus pandemic to be able to access some of the leaders in the water profession. We're able to come and share some of their lessons to date and insight of where the industry might be going based on the limitations, restrictions, new challenges that coronavirus is putting upon us. So today we're lucky to have four panelists who are leaders out in the profession. The first is Jim Herberg. He's the general manager for the Orange County Sanitation District, and Jim has been with OCSD since 1995. The organization provides regional wastewater services to 2.6 million residents with an annual operating and capital budget of approximately $450 million. OCSD and the Orange County Water District have also jointly developed the groundwater replenishment system, the world's largest water purification system for indirect potable reuse. And it produced about 100 million gallons per day of drinking water. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Our next panelist today is Diane Taniguchi-Dennis with Clean Water Services. Diane is the Chief Executive Officer there, and they're a water resources management utility that provides water resource recovery, stormwater, and watershed restoration services for 600,000 customers in urban Washington County, Oregon, and that, I'm going to say this wrong probably, but the Tualatin River watershed. The organization was born 50 years ago out of a water quality crisis and an inefficient network of 26 wastewater plants. But today, Clean Water Services is a provider of reliable, quality regional utility services, as well as a leader and innovator in environmental sustainability, water resources management, research and development of new technologies and digital solutions. So welcome, Diane.
Thank you, Walt, and thank you to the whole WEF team for making this happen. I'm delighted to be here today.
Great to have you. Our third panelist is Dave Dickey. He has more than 30 years of experience, and he's the Senior Business Line Executive for AECOM's Water and Environmental Practice. And in this role, he's responsible for developing and driving strategic growth initiatives and shaping the client account programs in an effort to pivot to a more client-focused organization. AECOM is ranked as the #2 design firm in the world for a third year in a row by ENR, and those were just announced for 2020 last week. And they've been #3 in water and #3 in sewer and waste, and they're also ranked as the #1 firm in environment in ENR's 2019 top 200. So welcome, Dave.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure. Our next panelist, Dr. B. Narayanan. He's president and CEO of Carollo Engineers, and they're the largest engineering firm focused solely on the water sector. He spent all of his 30-year working career with Carollo and has been president and CEO for the last 9 years. So welcome.
Thank you, Walt. Happy to be here with all of you.
Great. So I'm going to jump right in with questions and, just ask you, how's your business been affected by coronavirus so far? So Dave, you want to jump in there?
Sure. Well, it's certainly not business as usual. Business on so many fronts have been just turned on its head. I think it's fortunate that we can say that we've had literally no layoffs because of the coronavirus impact so far. We've been able to do that by looking at ways to reduce our work week for our leadership and the team to put a pool together to cover those folks. But we have seen about a 5% drop in our revenue. We've been able to offset some of that with some of the coronavirus opportunities. We've seen some delays in solicitation and bids, maybe a 5% drop, maybe 10%. But the biggest impact, of course, is that, we're working from home. 80% of our employees are working from home. And how do you go about doing that? And, we turned on a dime to be able to do that. And, we're focusing obviously a lot on our cloud-based platforms that can enable us to do that. But, sharing that information with our clients, how can we best do that? And, we're starting to look at what's next for us. What are going to be the economic impacts that follow the health impacts. And we have a long road to haul here moving forward.
Myself, Jim, how about with your utility? What impacts have you seen so far?
Probably similar to what other utilities are seeing. We were, I wouldn't say just fortunate or lucky, but pretty well prepared going in. We had completed a continuation of operations plan back in 2018 that actually had a pandemic element in it. So we had some processes in place and some planning in place to deal with this. And it actually talked about SARS type viruses and things. So it was actually pretty interesting how well we were prepared in some ways. And our IT folks had just installed Microsoft Teams and some networking remote work capability, although we didn't really have employees telecommuting prior to it. Within a couple of days, we had half of our employees out at home telecommuting, and they remain there today. And then our hands-on employees continue to work in the treatment plant, in the collection system, in the laboratory, pardon me, construction inspection, source control inspection, with social distancing, with PPE, and taking great care to keep our workers safe. We have extra cleaning going on and disinfecting of work areas, and continuous communication with our staff. We're doing updates, we're doing team meetings, and I've been just really pleasantly surprised and delighted at how productive everyone has remained, and what a tight team we've remained during this. We have around 600 employees, and so it's a difficult organization to keep on top of and have interaction with everyone on a regular basis under normal conditions. And in some ways, with this online type communication, we've been doing better maybe than we did before, and keeping our employees up to date. So we're certainly learning a lot from it. From an operational standpoint, the wastewater is coming in. We're treating it. We're meeting all of our permit limits. We continue to give effluent to the water district. They're operating the groundwater replenishment system at full capacity. And our critical infrastructure projects continue to be constructed on schedule. Our contractors continue to show up, again, practicing social distancing and using PPE. So as of now, I'd say we're still the reliable, 365-day-a-year, 24-hour-a-day utility that we need to be.
Excellent. Yeah. Hi, Narayanan. What do you see at Carollo as some of the impacts?
Yeah, so we were a little bit at the other side of the spectrum. So we were completely unprepared for this. So literally we had around 25%, I'll say, remote working capacity when this hit. And so in 1 week, we had to basically transition the entire company, 1,200 people, over to remote working. So it was challenging. But again, as all of you've said, it amazes me, the human spirit, and how quickly people adjust to things. So within a week, we pretty much transitioned the whole company. And kind of like Jim was saying, we are a pretty close-knit company. And so my biggest concern with the people was the lack of connectivity. Only our remote working force prior to this was probably 10%. Suddenly everyone's remote. Biggest fear was morale and lack of connectivity. And it's been incredible. It's actually been the opposite. I do believe people are more connected now because they're all sitting at home and they're all connected through MS Teams. And so on the people side, it's all been very good. I'll say morale's very good. And it's amazed me how the transition to remote working has been as seamless as you could imagine. Seems like we're still getting work out. Everything's going well. On the business side, again, the impacts so far have been, I'll say, manageable. We've seen around 6% of our backlog be placed on hold, which is pretty modest. So at this point, I think things look good. Worry, of course, with our industry is it doesn't stop or turn on a dime. So there's a momentum that keeps going with ongoing projects and backlog. So the concern's not right now, it's what happens later as some of the pursuits and things maybe get turned off or delayed. And that's the lag we're worried about a little bit. So from a business standpoint, the portion we would worry about would be towards the end of this year and the period beyond. And a lot of that is stuff none of us know. It will depend on how the national economy plays out and then the impacts on the local communities.
Yeah, thanks. Diane, how about you? I was just at your facility in January, and that seems like years ago. So what are some of the effects you've seen?
Yeah, the world has certainly changed. Our new normal is a lot different, and I want to say that the folks here at Clean Water Services are adapting well. And like the other folks, we continue to deliver services 24/7, and we remain on compliance. I did want to provide a little coronavirus sort of context. So Washington County is where the home of Clean Water Services is, and we were one of the first cases in the United States. So on February 28th, the first case was here in Washington County, Oregon. And in fact, that person became symptomatic on February 19th. So really early on in Washington County, we were being impacted by this new novel virus. And I'm happy to announce he was just released on Monday after 2 months of being in the hospital. And the community celebrated. There was a band there really heralding the battle that he had and his family. And the county really rallied around that family and all of the families here in Washington County that are being impacted by COVID. So in Washington County, we currently have 531 cases out of 600,000 souls, and we've had 12 deaths. So we've tested about 1.5% of the population, so it's not a huge amount of community testing yet because it's the sickest people that are being tested. And roughly of that 531 cases, half of those folks have recovered. From an economic standpoint, we're already monitoring the metrics of what's going on. So Washington County is now seeing 8.1% of the unemployment claims have been filed with our workforce here in the broader county. And it is interesting and not surprising that the service sector makes up 9.3% of that, and the goods sector is about 4.2%. So in Oregon, with its Stay Home, Save Lives initiative, we still had parts of the economy working, right? So the first line, emergency response with healthcare, but all of the essential services like clean water services and manufacturing continued to operate. So really, this economic hit is to our service sector and our goods sector. So we're already planning for that. So I'd like to say that the coronavirus, I kind of look at it as the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, right? The coronavirus. So Clean Water Services early on took on the philosophy of being very pragmatic and practical and precautionary in our stances here at the district. So we did declare the emergency on March 3rd and began taking actions within the organization in its emergency response. So the good part, the innovation and collaboration across the water sector is continuing. The whole wastewater surveillance research, Clean Water Services is active both on this international work group as well as locally here in Oregon. We're collaborating with Oregon State University in a study utilizing Clean Water Services as its facilities as part of that study to not only look at the influent numbers, but also to look at areas within the conveyance systems. And we're finding early on this data is really providing some interesting outcomes. And that data is showing that in a particular treatment facility where we had a huge spike of detection of the RNA, that it actually translates well to the location of the COVID cases that have been tested positive. So this, I think this innovation is going to have a really great promise to help states and communities look at what's going on. Because not only, you're looking at it from the context of community spread, right? It's not only the folks that are sick, but it's also the folks that are recovering, and it's giving you a sense of what's going on within the community. So that innovation is continuing. So that's a very good thing of the coronavirus. I'm finding that our internal networks between staff and, you know, I want to say Our silos, we call them our cylinders of excellence, you know, our technical silos, all of those are really dropping. The walls have dropped, and we've all been remarking about that and how people are showing up differently, how they choose to show up, and we're very excited about that. We also see this as a unity of the entire organization acting as one. So as the workforce goes, that part has been positive. The team is extremely adaptive. So some of them are doing new things. Like within the lab, we had a shortage of hand sanitizer and wipes, and they created your own DIY wipes and sanitizer. And I know that's going on in other utilities also, but we're also supplying it to some of our other agencies here in the region. So we mix the brew, and they get to figure out how to fill their bottles and their wipes. Now the bad part, it's impacting families. And we have not had any positive COVID cases at Clean Water Services, but certainly it's knocked on our door several times where folks had close contact, and we were very thankful that they did not develop COVID. So we're really focusing on wellness, our caring, our kindness, and support. The bad part of it was, at first, there was a lot of fear. We did help folks through constant communication and providing of resources. But really, the team has transitioned from fear to learning about what they can do, and also to growth. So we're continuing on with our training within the organization. Our revenue is down. Our April numbers are 16% off of the growth track that we had previously planned, and we're having roughly 2% of the customer base already showing more and more difficulty to pay. And I expect that is going to grow over time. But what I want to say about how it's affected the business in terms of the ugly, I'm glad to say we have not yet seen the ugly. We've been very fortunate without having cases here, and folks have done a great job with their physical distancing. I also want to say that I find that Clean Water Services employees are amazing when things are good, but they're even more amazing when things are bad. And what I want to say is this is really the dream team that I would want to go through a pandemic with. They're very thoughtful and very proactive in the actions that they're taking. And I'll share a little bit more on some of the strategies that we've deployed. But thank you all.
Great. But, you know, Diane, it sounds like you may be ahead of where some of the organizations are right now, just because of the nature of how the pandemic hit. That may be a good transition for me to ask the question. You know, what do you all see for the next 6 to 12 months? Narayan, what do you see at Carollo coming? You talked a bit about the backlog. What else do you see on the horizon?
I think what's unique about this downturn is just the very high degree of uncertainty. So you hear all these projections of, is it going to be a V-shaped recovery, U-shaped recovery, a bathtub recovery? Reality is, I don't think any of us knows. This was a true black swan kind of event that we don't have any precedents to go by. So kind of what we've been doing is best we can try to figure out, try to bracket that uncertainty in our work, and realize that no matter how well we think we've bracketed it, things are still going to be probably off, and you need to have contingency plans. So that's been kind of our approach, come up with some projections, but then have contingency plans on both sides for our people and the business side. So on the people side, it's really starting with the premise that we never want to have to lay off anyone because of this. So how do we plan for that given all this uncertainty? So a lot of the obvious stuff, let's look for reductions in some of our fixed overhead costs. And so that's where this crisis actually helps, just because of the nature of the crisis. There are some inbuilt reductions everyone's going to get. Travel, for example. Our travel costs this year are probably going to be half of what they were in other years. Things like that. Conferences are getting canceled, and a lot of our internal events are getting canceled. So there's some cost savings there. And then couple that with some elements of, I'll say, pain sharing by leadership to make sure that our people, that we don't have to lay off anyone. So that's how we are addressing it on the people side. And so I think for the next 6 to 12 months, we believe at this point that all of those measures should be enough. On the business side, I think it's something similar. Again, we've got this uncertainty. a lot of things are outside of our control, how the markets respond, how the communities respond, and how our clients respond in response to that. Things within our control are, I'll say, two elements. One is on the pursuits we're going after, trying to make sure that we win more of those than we lose. So trying to be more competitive on those. And then on the internal side, trying to use this time for, I'll say, company building activities. We want to keep our people. So if we don't have a whole lot of work, let's get them engaged in long-term activities that help the company build for the future. One thing I am certain of, as I'm sure all of us are, long-term, the water industry is probably a really, really good place to be. And so we'll come out of all of this. Question is just doing the right things while we are in this so we come out stronger.
Thank you. Jim, how about at Orange County?
Well, first of all, I echo what everyone said. I'm just so impressed with the resiliency and the dedication of our staff. And it's a time like this, you're fortunate to be in the water sector, but just proud to be a part of this industry and the way everyone is responding. It's been remarkable. And hopefully, in the next 6 to 12 months, physically, we can come back together and get some of that, quote, normalcy back. I don't know how normal, it'll be a new normal, it won't be the old normal, but hopefully it's a little bit easier on people. I know there's a lot of stress, whether you're at home right now and you wish you were at work, or you're at work and you're nervous and wish you could be home. Either way, there's issues there. So hopefully that shakes out and we get back to some normalcy. But the really good news is, as it would happen, we have been planning and designing a lot of work over the last couple of years. And so Narayanan, Carollo, and AECOM have been part of that program and doing designs for us. We have $500 million worth of construction projects that are shovel ready in the next 14 months. So we will be, dropping the hammer on our program and going after capital projects. We'll be putting a lot of projects out to bid of all sizes, from over $200 million down to 60,000. We think it's going to be a great time to be doing that work, that we should have a good bidding environment. It's going to be good for our community to have these projects going on as a stimulation to our economy. And they're needed projects. They're projects that are heavily weighted toward rehabilitation and resiliency. A lot of really great projects are coming up. So we see an acceleration in our construction program in the next 6 to 12 months. That's what we have programmed. We believe we have the funding in place to do that now. And on the design side, we'll be starting new design projects as well. So we don't see ourselves letting up at all in that program. And that's a good thing. So full speed ahead, and hopefully it's a favorable environment to get those projects done.
Well, outstanding. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talk about how this is a real chance for America to invest in infrastructure that we need and really jumpstart the economy back into shape. Dave, what do you see for the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, I see a lot of uncertainty. There's absolutely, there's little doubt of that. And to that point, what are we doing then, breaks down into several bins. We're clearly focusing on our people first right now. We've not had any layoffs. We don't want to have any layoffs. So we're following through on best practices on what it means to be safe and healthy and actively engaged. We have a team that's been looking for how do we help with the workload balance? If folks are a little light in one location, how can we, maybe help out somewhere else where they need some help? And things along those lines. So, the regular communications and what we're doing there is very important, but, business continues, right? And so we're also continuing to see how we can best assist our clients. We're now starting to think about, return to the workplace. So what does that look like in terms of disinfecting, the workplace? What are the return to operations in general look like? What does the office look like in the future? But we also want our clients to start looking and thinking about, we believe there's going to be a stimulus package that will come down for water and transportation infrastructure. So what does that mean? How do we position for that to get, our industry's share of that stimulus money? But on the business as usual, front, we actually just kicked off our FY21 strategic planning process. And, given an uncertainty, what does that look like in terms of the COVID impacts, and so, like was said earlier, we're looking at, economic scenarios. How do we bracket that uncertainty to come in with, some contingencies and strategies to best deal with that, while we're looking forward. But we know when we return to the office, and that's the last part of what we're planning right now, we're starting to think about what is that going to look like? Not just returning, because you're still going to have social distancing things to worry about, disinfecting, how are you going to handle visitors to the office if you're going to allow them. We're not allowing visitors to our offices right now where we're providing essential services. But it also is getting us to start thinking about, well, what is the office of the future going to look like? Maybe it's not going to be 80% of our workforce working at home like it is now, but I think that you're going to see a far larger, portion working from home. And I think the actual look and feel of that office is going to look different in the future as well to reflect that. So very interesting times for what the next 6 to 12 months are going to bring us.
Excellent. Yeah. Certainly is making us creative. It's forcing us to new solutions, new approaches, and a lot of those are going to stick. Diane, I know you have a lot of innovation and changes up in your area. Tell us, what do you see for the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, with the coronavirus, what we're looking at it is in sort of 3 phases, right? We've been through the shutdown phase of the economy. In Oregon, we're beginning to restart. And then ultimately, we hope to get to recovery in a year or 2. So we've been doing economic studies, and what we're finding is we're anticipating, I think what they're calling it is it's almost like a square root sign. So they're seeing the decline and then a rise through restarting and recovery. And then the question becomes, right, do you actually get back to the economic activity where you had been? So we're really looking at this theme of learning to live with the virus. We do know until we can reach herd immunity, whether through vaccine and whether or not we have actual treatment protocols, we're going to have to live with this virus. We're anticipating strategies for dealing with a potential resurgence in the fall that's coupled with the flu. So we're being very mindful of this. And so in looking forward to our strategies to move from what we're currently calling a level 4 emergency to reopening of a level 3, we're still going to be maintaining, at least for the next 90 days, this alternative shifting that we're on. We're looking at the same question folks had mentioned: when do we invite others into the building? And then how has the building been modified? So we're really focusing in this next de-escalation of the services to keep doing what we're doing with the development community, but also to be able to do it well remotely, but also to plan what this building is going to need. I believe the building is going to need a different kind of pathway for entry and access to the building for both employees and for our visitors. It's going to take more active health monitoring. So the group is already working on putting together wellness kits, because we want to take on the philosophy of, as we live with the virus, we have to be very good at managing our own wellness. And so this kit, the team's got some really great ideas. It's making sure people have thermometers. I was surprised at how many people don't have thermometers at home. Making sure they have thermometers. We're actually sourcing pulse oximeters for everyone so that they can monitor their oxygen saturation, so that they know if they're developing symptoms and they're actually having breathing issues. They can proactively manage that with their healthcare. We're providing water bottles and different things to maintain their hydration. So we're very focused on wellness and de-stressing folks so that they know that they have the tools. We're also focusing on self-monitoring of contact tracing, because we do know that it's extremely important with this virus. So how can they proactively do this? Because I do know when COVID hits, or the worry of it, I think we forget where we've been and who we've been around. So we're proactively preparing the workforce for that. We're going to go through our budget adoption in June. I did delay that by a month so we could prepare a budget that made sense for the coronavirus. So we did something unique. So we planned sort of a base budget for this year, but I also funded money in what I call non-departmental, so that anything that we were planning for growth within the organization or initiatives is actually going to be appropriated, but we'll be making decisions of go, no go on a 90-day rolling basis to make sure that we're watching the revenue that's coming in the door and the investments that we want to make in people and equipment and capital. So we're still hiring people, but we're being very strategic about those hires. It's been an interesting process to be able to do recruitment via web chat, but I think we can still maintain that great rapport with talent that we need to bring to Clean Water Services. We are not traveling through the end of the year, so that's been heavily curtailed unless it's a business critical need. We want to make sure we're not importing the virus to the organization as well as exporting it out. So I think now's the time. With the business, we're going to continue to do our construction. There is a little bit of slowing on some of the more discretionary projects, but we're still going to be prepared with shovel-ready projects should there be some stimulus that we could partake in. But the team is very optimistic. They're very focused on very strategic and controlled decision making.
Oh, excellent. A lot of stuff going on there. You know, I think everyone at some point, you know, talked about the value of their staff and the concern about ensuring they have a nimble workforce, but also a very safe one. Jim, can you tell us any more about any of the strategies or tactics that you're using in Orange County to help keep that workforce safe and nimble?
Sure. You know, focusing on what we're doing now and the environment that we're all working in right now is whenever I reach out to staff and we have messages, we always reinforce that our #1 priority is the safety and health of our employees and the public. That's why we exist in this business. We're a wastewater agency, a water resource recovery facility. And so protecting public health and the environment, making sure that our employees are safe is always at the forefront of everything that we do. And as an industry, I think we are wired this way. And there's been some things that have been very helpful. So to be nimble and resilient, to be an employee that shows up and does this job, they want some certainty. They want to understand, you know, what are the risks to me in going to work. And I think one of the things that's been very useful is there's been some joint website information put out with in partnership between WEF, the CDC, OSHA, NACWA has gotten on board, and there's a lot of information about PPE. You know, is COVID-19 in wastewater? Can it be transmitted that way? And there's been some information that's great to be able to get one source of information that everybody shares and get that out to the employees and make sure that that they understand the importance of PPE and where the industry is on that. So I think having that information has been great, and we have to be transparent with our employees because we have to have trust. And going through these changes in this very different environment that we're in right now, as leaders, we have to build trust with our employees so that that you can make the changes. And in a pandemic like this, you know, it's drastic change. We're all seeing it, and so we've just got to keep communicating with our employees, keep building that trust. And I think that's a key thing in making us nimble.
Yeah, Dave, what do you see at AECOM around that safety and nimble issue?
I see, you know, a handful of things. I mean, I agree. Safety has been job one for us, and we were fortunate to have, you know, procedures for these types of events. I wouldn't have called it a comprehensive, you know, pandemic procedure, but you know, it is now. And we've been able to, you know, share our best practices from our global operations just to give us a better understanding of, you know, how is our Hong Kong office or other China offices, you know, return to work, or how did they, what did they have to do so they could have a large number of their employees work from home. So we had the benefit of bringing that into our strategies for how we were dealing with the U.S. and the Americas workforce. So we were fortunate for that. Like I mentioned, you know, 80% of our employees are working from home right now. And, you know, we had already, switched to, you know, cloud-based technology just because of our global footprint. So that enabled us, you know, with some additional modifications on bandwidth and just going through some trials and errors for folks to be able to do that. But that was a key part of that strategy, you know, and having our folks being able to work from home. But, you know, looking at travel, we have curtailed our travel, right? We don't see travel returning to anywhere near a norm, at least for the next 3 to 6 months. And we're not just discouraging it. You know, we're requiring senior leadership approval for travel that has to be made. We want to make sure that it's essential. We're providing then access letters for some of these areas that, you know, that are still have stay-at-home work orders. And so, you know, we've been very active on that. And I mentioned some of the office strategies that we're using. I mean, we're discouraging people from going to the office. We don't want any visitors. You know, we're making sure that cleaning supplies are there, you know, throughout the office to make that happen. And we're enforcing those social distancing, you know, ideas when they are in the office. But we've also had impacts to our site work. You know, some work still has to go on, and some folks are still in the work, still in the field. So we've looked at, you know, how do we stagger work times to perhaps, you know, avoid a lot of people on the site all at once. We've instituted mandatory daily site cleanings and have encouraged, you know, individual vehicle use instead of multiple people using a, you know, construction vehicle at the site or whatever, you know, what the case would be. But you know, those are sort of the elements that are around the safety, you know, elements of you know, that what are we doing about the pandemic procedures. The other aspect is just what are some of the strategies we're doing to keep our employees healthy, right? Healthy, engaged, and you know, a lot of what we're doing there is just regular communication from the leadership to our employees. You know, what's going on. You know, what can people do? Where should they look if they're looking for assistance in whatever that might be? You know, we're having those weekly call-in chats with our teams. Our HR folks are having weekly call-ins. You know, hey, call me if you have an issue. And it's broadly being used. But some of the other kind of interesting things we're seeing is things like a Friday social, where we have teams together, you know, like at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and they raise their wine glass, but they're together with their team. And there are, you know, lots of innovative things like that, just to keeping people, you know, engaged, and you know, feeling that they're a part of a larger workforce. You know, as it relates to the nimble side of the equation, you know, obviously you want folks to be fully engaged to be able to do that. But we've been using our safety, health, and environment and resilience teams, you know, to support that as best we can. And obviously thinking ahead and leveraging these global best practices has helped us, you know, anticipate some of the things that we'll need to do and then be ready to do them when the time comes. We've also, like I've mentioned, put together these resource teams so that we can help folks pivot to other work that might not be in their home office or in their backyard, and so that we're keeping them engaged and working on projects, you know, that way. And again, you know, for us to continue to be nimble, we need to make sure that we have the tools for our folks to work at home and to execute successfully and not have a drop, you know, in productivity. And so what are the things and aspects to do to best keep them engaged and working productively? So that's kind of what we've been dealing with.
Oh, excellent. You know, we heard a lot from Jim and Dave. Diane, you touched on this issue before. you have any more thoughts on the safety and nimble side?
Yeah, I you know, similar to the other organizations, you know, we're at a 60-40, so 60% of our group's telecommuting and 40 is still operating the plants and doing the field operations activities and also the lab activities. We're finding that some of the home offices, folks are needing some additional resources. So essentially we've created a system to check out monitors, and some folks needed better chairs ergonomically. I know I was one of them, but so we've been very adaptive in terms of making sure that the home office is productive for the employees. We're going to be telecommuting for a while more. I feel very fortunate that we have the technology that we could deploy to make this happen. We're going to stay on modified shifts like folks talked about and modified reporting locations. We actually needed to bring on site more showers and portable showers and toilets as we re-looked at where we were deploying some team members. Just the fact that folks are using their vehicles as their offices, the normal place they would stop for a rest stop doesn't exist anymore. So we've have been thinking more broadly where these bathrooms are and where the respite is for our employees as they're working in the field. But you know, we're beginning to think our philosophy of the building is going to change. We're very open. I mean, Walt, when you came to visit us, the workspaces are pretty open, so we're beginning to think about physical distancing and how do we, you know, in this new circumstance that we learned about, how do we create more of that physical space. You know, the wellness thing is going to be sort of interesting. We're not used to wearing cloth masks around, so just getting people through that process of when they should use it and that it's okay to use it. It's not really the culture that we have, right, to wear these masks. We're still actively sourcing PPE. It's not easy to get PPE. We're trying to make sure that we're not competing with the healthcare folks, but yet we still have PPE needs here at the district. The virtual learning platform we had been working on, we're looking at deploying even more broadly now. Because of its benefits, and actually encouraging team members to take advantage of conferences that are now moving to virtual platforms. Because in fact, more people now can attend than previously when we had to pay for a hotel and for travel. We have enacted a very progressive leave policy to make sure that employees, should they contract COVID or there's issues where they needed to be isolated, that they're covered, that they don't have to worry that they don't have enough leave. We've been working with folks who have care needs because of supportive care for other folks where the supportive care has been disrupted, and our families that need support because the kids are out of school. We're already pre-planning how to be supportive with those families as they go through the summer, because all of the summer camps are being shut down, and some of the childcare is a little more difficult to find. So one of the things we've started are gatherings, right? While we're physical distancing, we still need to keep our social activities up, and we're losing things like our summer picnic where we were going to celebrate our 50th anniversary. So we're thinking of different ways to continue the celebration, but in different ways. There's CEO chats about a particular issue, the families that are struggling with young children, or families that are struggling with their teenagers and keeping them on task. But it's the ability to connect people with shared sort of challenges in their daily life, in addition to encouraging their work life and work in this new virtual way. But our rates, we're gonna hold our rates and charges steady through the end of the year. We would normally raise rates and charges on July 1st, but until we see some economic metrics that are improving, we are going to make that commitment to the region.
Oh, excellent. Narayanan, what's going on at Carollo with the safety and nimbleness issue?
A lot of the others have covered a lot of the same things, so I'll keep it brief. I think just trying to think of something new that might not have been covered. So with the different offices we have, as these regions are looking to come back online, it's all happening at different times. Kind of the approach we've taken is we don't want to be the early adopters. Our philosophy has been pretty much encouraging folks to work from home. And one of the things we're finding is everyone's reacting to this very differently. It's a very emotional reaction for some people, for others. So the approach we've taken is kind of do what works for you. If you feel you can work from home, continue to work from home. If you feel you're ready to come back and we are ready to open the office, that'll be the approach there. So that's on the safety side. A couple of other quick points. On the connectivity, again, with us, there's a little bit of necessity driving us because we weren't on Microsoft Teams when this pandemic hit. Our plan was to introduce that towards the end of the year, so we had to accelerate that. And it's been an incredibly beneficial thing for the company. As I said earlier, my biggest worry was the lack of connectivity and potential erosion of morale. And it's been the exact opposite. Because of these virtual collaboration tools, it seems like people are a lot more connected. A lot of the same things others talked about, virtual coffee hours, virtual happy hours, a lot more connectivity. And also an ability for people to get messages out company-wide, a lot of training going on, educational stuff going on, all of that's been good. The other very surprising aspect of this has been just the attitudes to remote working, how they've changed. So I'd say before this crisis hit, probably two viewpoints. The company viewpoint was probably very suspicious of remote working. Do we know it's going to work? We don't think it's going to work. And staff was probably a lot more bullish on remote working. Hey, this sounds good. Why don't we do this? I'd say it's completely switched around. As from the company standpoint, we look at how well it's working. It's amazing. This is great. And so a lot of our old paradigms have shifted. We see, oh, this is great. You don't have to commute 2 hours. It's really good. And so that's been, companies moved this way. Staff, meanwhile, are moving a little bit towards the middle. They're finding it's not all what they thought it would be, hanging around with the family, kids running around all the time. So I think when we come out of this, we'll meet somewhere in the middle, and it'll all be good.
Thanks. So I'm going to let you keep running on here because I know you were last on the last question. It's difficult to keep adding stuff, but I'll give you the first word on, any other thoughts for what you see coming next in our industry.
Nothing other than, again, I keep going back to, this is an awesome industry. We all know it. Well, that's why we are in this industry. And the fundamentals of this industry are still rock solid. If you had to pick one industry to be in, if you're an engineer, it's water. And those fundamentals aren't going to change. So the beginning of this year, I remember sending out a message to the company talking about, oh, what a great time to be in the water industry. Just think of everything that's happening technically. Think of the issues, the huge imbalances in supply and demand, all of the stuff happening in global climate change, impact on water, and just the increase in public consciousness relative to value of water. That couldn't be a better time to be in the industry. So that was earlier this year. And while this pandemic has hit, like I said, I think it's a black swan kind of event. In the end, after this goes off, those fundamentals are still rock solid. This industry is going to come back, and we'll all be happy we are in this industry.
Yeah. Dave, what do you see?
I still see a lot of uncertainty. But the reality is, water is life. This business is not going away. What we do is so critical, to our people, to the community. And I think that, given the uncertainty and given the lessons that we're starting to learn, it really is keeping a nimble and open mind to what will become new ways of doing business in the future. And I think if we just kind of prepare as best we can and to keep that open mind and go with the flow a little bit here, that we're going to come out of this just fine at the end of the day.
Excellent. And Diane, how about you?
Yeah, many of you may know Dr. Ken Williamson, and he sent me something last night. Ken is our Director of Research and Innovation here at Clean Water Services, and he sent me that whole quote from Sun Tzu. And what it made me really think about is we do need to know the industry, we need to know our team, so know the business we have, and we need to know the virus, because Sun Tzu said that if you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. So as we learn to live with this virus and find our new normal and be hopeful for that day when we can have a vaccine and reach herd immunity so things can go back to normal, that we get to choose who we want to be, the leaders we want to be, the organization we want to be, as we continue to protect public health and the environment. So I'm feeling very hopeful, even in uncertainty, because I know that we don't need to fear the results of those 100 battles. We will overcome them.
Oh, well, excellent advice from all of you. You know, we are all feeling that struggle with uncertainty, but as you've all mentioned, this is an amazing industry with people who bring great passion and expertise. You know, I thank you today as leaders in this industry for being willing to come on and share some of your thoughts about where we're going, you know, both in the near term and in the long term. Because like you, I'm very bullish that this is a great industry, and we're going to continue to serve the public health and provide a great product that everyone certainly needs. So again, thank you for your time today. I know it's you're busy, it's challenging, so thanks. I hope the viewers today are getting something out of this. And for the other information that the Water Environment Federation has been putting out around coronavirus almost daily, please go to our website at wef.org, and you can see the latest information that our members are putting out, as well as experts from CDC, the World Health Organization, and other state and local health agencies to make sure that we all get through this crisis healthy and get through it together. So again, thank you. And I look forward to seeing our viewing audience at our next segment. So thanks.
Thank you.